Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, The Magical Solution. My name is Leilani. We are live here on all the streaming platforms, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitch, X, all the things. And it is Tuesday night, which means that it is our book club tonight, which means we will be continuing reading our current book, which is the Harmonial Philosophy. And we are on book 2, chapter 3. I apologize for my dog. Hold on one second. Archie! Can you close the door? Sorry about that, you guys. He's whining because he wants to be up here with me. But if I bring him up here with me, he will make an absolute ruckus. He made it up here anyway. Hey, buddy. Okay. You want to come up? You want to come up and say hello to everybody? No? You just want to be loud? You just want to be disruptive? Anywho. And here comes the second one. Hey, girl. All right, everyone's here to screw up my live. Hello. Okay. All right. So as we move forward, let us get the book. Let me change screens here and let me share screen. Oh, well, thank you. I mean, my lighting isn't that bad.
It's also not great.
Okay, I don't know why this isn't working.
It's good, but it could be better.
There we go. Boom. Okay. Nice. Here we go. So those of you who are on TikTok, make sure that you head over to either YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, and these will be places where you can read along with me. Otherwise, you guys here on TikTok, you're just gonna have to see my ugly mug reading to you out loud. So you choose your poison, right? Everyone else who has access to leaving me a comment in the comment section, let me know if you can see the screen. All right, let's see. Now, the way this is going to roll out is we read for about 45 minutes, depending on how long the chapter is, depending on how much of footnotes we have, etc. But we're going to read for like 45 minutes, and then we're going to leave the floor open for questions. Now, as I'm reading, please feel free to ask questions. I may not see them right away, but I'll definitely get to them. All right? Okay, let's get to it. So the days of creation. So the first thing we need to first discuss is what we got up to this point. So up to this point, Andrew Jackson Davis has been discussing sort of the cosmology of spiritualism. Okay, so the cosmology of spiritualism, according to him and the revelations he received, was that, you know, that there is sort of this central point from which all things expanded and came forth from, right? So like kind of like a Big Bang theory. But from this central point came other central points, meaning like, and the way that he used the terminology, he called it the central sun, right? So the main sun, meaning the main star, right? That once it had decided to create and go forth with its creation, created many other suns in its likeness. And those suns then created many other planets, and those planets have spirits on them. And what those spirits look like might differ from place to place, right? So he talks about that. And then in the second book, in the second chapter area, that's when he starts getting into each of the planets and what type of life exists on each of these planets. He goes into what the atmosphere is made out of. He goes into the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and then of course the spirit, the human kingdom, or the thing that's closest to humans, if you will, on each planet. So now we're on chapter 3, and we're really gonna get into not only Earth, but sort of more of like the laws of the creation of Earth and all that good stuff. Okay, so let's get into it. The days of creation. Now, the first day of creation unfolded one of the laws or attributes belonging to the cosmic totality, being that of power manifested in motion. The developments of the second day brought forth the attribute of wisdom. Goodness was manifested on the third day in the arrangement and adaptation of all things. Those peculiar conditions and circumstances which characterize the fourth day and their results, which were very good, developed justice and reciprocity as further aspects of wisdom. On the fifth day, it produced a new order of beings, possessing faculties and sensibility not existing previously, and capable, therefore, of estimating the distinction between higher and lower forms. In this manner, forbearance came into expression, and a spirit of mercy was established in the animated tribes. The beauties which were unfolded on the sixth day, connected as they are with all previous forms and being of development of their interior qualities, correspond to the ultimate ascension of all parts and principles, the unfolding of all attributes latent in the first type or the germ of all subsequent, right? So this is really sort of taking a piece from our biblical sources, right? That God created everything in 7 days, et cetera, et cetera. And so he's kind of using this same format. So yeah, of all subsequent developments. Sorry. Okay. The attribute of the sixth day, in a word, immortal truth, at once in relation to all others, because it is the root of all and is exalted above all. It comprehends that which is below and contains that which is beyond, being qualities which will unfold eternally in the future of worlds. It is the medium of association between all spirituality, expanded minds, and encompasses all nature. It is it is that which is to be admired and adored above every other thing. It should illuminate the interior constitution of every being and should lead the mind from that which is without, the understanding of things present to that which is within the term of all and the ultimate. It is an index to the whole creation of the sixth day. It will yet prepare the mind for the corresponding future day of a more perfect creation. Looking in this direction to that which unfolds therefrom, looking also behind and discerning in past epochs the germ of those which are to come, we enter into a world of knowledge which has righteousness at its highest name. The field of truth expands, and there expands also within us the spirit of goodness and benevolence, of justice and reciprocity, the gifts of wisdom and the meaning of beauty. A pure and reverential regard for truth makes order in the whole mind. And from that which is mind in humanity, we pass on to contemplate in its stupendous operations the fountain of omnipotent mind. Okay, so that kind of discusses in these 6 days sort of the evolution from mind to mind, right? So from the great cosmic mind came these subsequent things, which then led to the final stage, which is the mind of its creation. And we know that the mind of its creation holds the highest form within all other creations because it has the ability to contemplate the ultimate mind, the first cause. And so here we are doing that nice little fun little figure eight between these two epics, if you will. And that is what in this particular chapter we would consider the first days of creation, right? Really? That was it? That's the whole chapter? Okay, well then I guess I'll read you the footnote because that was a sad little tiny chapter. Okay. So the footnote says here, and so this passage that we just read came from Andrew Davis, Andrew Jackson Davis's book called The Principles of Nature, right? And so it says here that it should be observed that this is a moral epilogue arising in the mind of the seer after the pageant of creation has passed before the eyes of his vision. But as the universe for Davis exemplified the divine perfections, there is a sense in which it can be understood, as one might say, literally. A poet has said that God reveals himself in many ways, and hence the world is God's gospel. His beneplacitum termino currens, as the Hermeticists call it, abounds everywhere. Okay. And the other footnote, it says here, it will be seen that this is a figurative delineation of the creative days, and there is an analogous presentation by Swedenborg because, as we know, Andrew Jackson Davis was highly influenced by Dr. Swedenborg, like in all of his writings. Like you can see it. It's almost, there are times where he pretty much plagiarizes the guy, but we'll get into that another day. So, though Davis is concerned with the cosmic order of its development, while the author of Arcana Celestia deals more especially with the microcosm, both, without knowing it, reflect the Zohar. So, the author's commentary, and the author being someone who is compiling all of Andrew Jackson Davis's work into this volume, is comparing both Andrew Jackson Davis and Swedenborg to the Zohar, which is a whatchamacallit, which is a text within sort of the Abrahamic slash Muslim sort of cosmology world, right? These are all written in the times where these things were influencing each other, right? But anyway, without knowing it, they reflect the Zohar, for which also man is the great intent of creation, and the story of creation unfolding as given in Genesis is that of the macrocosm, certainly, but its a vital import is of the spiritual history of Israel. Okay. According to Swedenborg, the 6 days or periods are successive states of human regeneration. The first is the Spirit of God moving over the face of the waters of the soul. The second is the division between those things which are the Lord's and those that belong to man. The third is the state of repentance, which brings forth tender herbs, and the herbs yielding seed and tree bearing fruit. The fourth is the state of love, enlightened by faith or the sun and the moon. And the fifth state of being confirmed in faith and goodness, producing living consequences, typified by fishes of the sea and birds of the heaven. And the sixth is the state of truth in its expression and deeds done from faith, typified by the living soul and the beast. So does the regenerate become a spiritual man in the image of God. This is according to the Arcana Celestia written by Swedenborg. There is nothing more arbitrary than this, and the moralities of Davis are the manner born of nature in comparison, right? So once again, the author is stating how like he totally just plagiarized him. All right, moving on to the next chapter, which is chapter 4, and it's entitled The Earth and Its Story. So now we're going to get into the creation of the earth and its specific story, okay? Now, at a glance at the progress of creation in the production of our earth and its inhabitants might serve for an illustration of the same process and progress of worlds in the vast expanse of the universe, as these are continually brought into existence. The object is one throughout being, as we shall see fully elsewhere, to develop and perfect individualized self conscience immortal spirits manifested in the image and likeness of the central cause and destined for the summer spheres. The process of formation is always from lower to higher, from crude to refined, from simple to complicated, from imperfect to perfect, but in distinct degrees or congeries. I don't know why I can't say that. That's really strange. Anyway, thus, after the sun gave birth to our planets, and it was the same with all other Earths, the action of vitality within the particles of matter and its constant emanation in the form of heat, light, electricity, etc., produced new compounds possessing the vital principle in sufficient quantities to give definite forms, from those of crystallization up to the sensation and intelligence. The last is the highest or ultimate attribute of things on earth and is possessed or attained in perfection by man alone. In the course of time, when the waters had subsided, the heat and light emanating from the sun acted upon the surface of rocks, abrading, decomposing, uniting with their elements and with the water of the seas, as also with rain and mist to produce other compounds of a more perfect nature. Thus, large beds of gelatinous matter were formed beneath the water level. Thus, soil was first formed, a combination of materials susceptible of developing vegetable life, both marine and terrestrial. The first vegetable forms springing from slimy rocks were simple in their structure. Lichens or cryptogamous plants, they elaborated from their own substance a germ or nucleus of vitality, enclosed within a receptacle capable of preserving and sustaining it till the favorable action of the elements could bring forth from each an image or likeness of its parent. So now they're describing the egg, right? Thereafter, the organized substance or body of the original plant died, having fulfilled its object of existence, and the element of which it is composed mingled with thin soil on the surface of the rocks, adding to its substance, increasing its complexity, and refining its particles, so that with the return of the vernal equinox, the genial raises of the sun, not only the seeds of the old lichen unfold, but a new, more complicated plant made its appearance. Thus, the ever present and working principle of vitality and creative energy, acting and reacting upon the materials of our globe, started the kingdoms of nature, each new type being dependent upon all that preceded it for existence, and being yet distinct from its predecessors. Bitch, when I tell you that this little section right here kind of blows my mind, not so much because the people in the 1800s didn't know this shit, because of course they did. This was still stuff that, was relatively observable in nature. But we didn't have examples of that act occurring in real time. These were all theoretical ideas, right? But today, my friend, today in 2024, we are seeing real life examples of this type of vitality and creative energy exchanging um, between simple particles and or simple life forms in order to create new life forms. So for example, right now there are certain plants or certain simple plants that exist in the oceans, in the rivers, in the lakes and stuff like that, that prior to the infestation of algae, And when I say infestation, I literally mean that, because it's okay to have a little bit of algae here and there on the waters, but when you have a lot of algae, when the algae takes over the entire pond or the entire lake or the entire river, it's a real problem for the life living inside the water. It blocks out the sun, it heats up the water, it kills a lot of other plant life. Not a lot of not many fish, not many things eat algae. And so therefore it becomes an invasive species in a lot of areas, right? But in today's world, in 2024, we are seeing very simple plant matter in these waters that are now absorbing the algae and creating new life forms from that, where both parents no longer exist, but that the chemicals and the vital energies from both of them merge together to create a new life form. And we're seeing that happening in real time in 2024. So this is pretty cool to see and to read after knowing this information. Now, certain conditions, proportions, and combinations of elementary inorganic substances are required to produce a vegetable, and vegetable growth is independent upon elementary regimen, while animals, which cannot be produced or sustained thereby, depend in their turn upon the vegetable kingdom, and this must therefore have preceded them. Where were it possible for vegetation to be blotted out from the face of the earth, the animal kingdom would soon be annihilated also. So are all types in the endless chain of organic and inorganic substances, the links in one system of cause and effect. So fixed and unvarying are those laws of the Father which regulate all of his works. Okay? In this manner, vegetation has been traced to its beginnings, but in the depths of the warm seas, there were slowly developed other points of life till minute fishes flourished in myriads therein. On the face of the solid earth, the first animals were huge in physical organization, where gastric receptacles for the digestion of dense forms of vegetable matter. They were steps in a flight of stairs for laws and materials to walk upward to the plane of finer organization. And it's true, the littler that we are, the finer that we are. It's true. This is coming from a small person. I am all of 4'10". Okay, so that was another small chapter. So let's go back to the footnotes really quick to ensure that we covered everything. So these accounts here from the Earth and its story come from his Andrew Jackson Davis's morning lectures, and the stellar key to the Summerland, right? So it is a reoccurring example of the loose literary methods adopted by Davis. Though he mentions on one occasion that he dislikes repeating himself, it is also, according to Davis, the highest and the ultimate in creation taken at large, as it is the sole purpose. Herein, the seer of Poughkeepsie reflected the Swedish seer. Swedenborg says that the end of the universe is that there may be an angelic heaven comparable to the sixth sphere of Davis, which is on the threshold of deity. But to say that an angelic heaven is the end of creation is to say that man is the end, because heaven consists of the human race. Hence, all things that are created are immediate ends and uses in the order, degree, and respect that they have relation to man, and by man to the Lord. Okay. And that also comes from his book, Divine Love and Wisdom. Okay. So, the compiler, the author of this book who is compiling all of these texts, I get it. I get it. He's looking at this and being like, okay, well, obviously this is like a blatant ripoff of Swedenborg, but not only that, both of these dudes are basically saying, they're basically reiterating the same patriarchal idea, and not just a patriarchal idea, but a very human centric idea that all of existence in every dimension, every universe, every multiverse is comparable and contingent to on the human race, meaning that the highest form of anything aside from like angels, which is God, angels, which is only second only to God, would be us. And it's just a very narcissistic view. One of the things I will say about spiritism, and all that, in the early years, is that they really, they have this very, very fucked up view about nature, in the sense that it is still less than we are. Yes, it needs to be respected. Yes, it needs to be taken care of. Yes, it has sentience, but the sentience of nature is still less than us, because nature cannot contemplate God. Only we can contemplate God. And so we must have the highest form of intelligence. And so again, this, it's just really, it's just gross. You know how it is. But luckily, the spiritist movements, as it has gone through history and as we see today, we're starting to update these ideas. We're starting to understand how consciousness manifests differently in different species, and how intelligence is just simply a different type of intelligence, not lesser or worse than or bad, but just different. And that difference is something that does need to be honored, and does not need to be looked at in terms of ranking, because all is deserving of God's love and grace, right? So that's what we're starting to see today, which is really exciting. Okay, we are now on chapter 5, the origin of man. Yay. So, prior to the present structure of the universe, the immeasurable realms of immensity were seas of unformed materials filled with elements of divine power, with essences of progressive and eternal tendency. At once, in the center and spreading to the unimaginable circumference of the holy artisan, the divine architect, the great positive mind. A sacred embodiment of celestial principles, a sublime creation, was conceived in the depths of his being. Having perfected the plan of the universe, God said, with full cooperation on the part of his indwelling love, "Let us make man." Thereupon, the first attributes of wisdom, which is use, said, "Man shall be a culmination of universal nature, so organized in his body as to receive and elaborate the animating elements of nature into an unchangeable soul, which soul shall possess and obey the tendency to unfold forever." Woo! Right? So here's a few of, and that's a loaded statement right there. That's a loaded statement right there. Okay. Because what we're seeing here are a few sort of precursors, if you will, a few sort of prerequisites for a man to be considered a man versus a beast. Because a human can still be a beast. A human can still function from an animalistic primal nature. And so this statement here allows us to sort of refine what it is to be a human that is made in the image of God. And that is that they are the organized body, right? They are the culmination of all the natures prior to it. So, in order for that to happen, they cannot be in their base animal nature, because that was the category before them, right? So, right off the bat, boom, if you are in any of the levels prior to, you are not a man, right? Or a human, right? Um you also, in this framework, you receive an elaborate soul, unchanging soul. Okay. Now, this is an interesting thing, because the elaborate, unchanging soul means that you are done, means that the soul is done. And now the change happens on a much more spiritual level, right? The physical changes of the soul are done, right? So when we talk about the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, they all are ensouled. They all have soul. They all have sentience, right? But that soul slash sentience is changing as it progresses through the chain, and the soul is less elaborate as it, as you go further back, right? And so when we say an elaborate unchanging soul that is a culmination of universal natures and all the elements of nature, an organized refined body, that is what they're talking about here. And then lastly, the last qualifier for the spiritual man, or the man who is now going to be on a spiritual journey, is that he will from this point forward have a tendency and a an automatic submission to God, a tendency to unfold their godhood and to obey God's laws. Okay. Now, if you don't follow any of these qualifiers in according to this framework, you would not be considered a human. You would not be considered a man. You would not be considered someone who is on the path of progression. Right. So that's an interesting statement there. Woo. But the second attribute of wisdom, which is justice, he says, he shall occupy such a position as will to secure all things organized and unorganized, visible or invisible, a permanent equilibrium of power, possession, and demand. So, yet another qualifier to be a spiritual person or a human is to understand that because you are at the top of the chain, because you have spiritual intelligence, you have been put in a position to secure all things. Okay. Now, securing does not mean possessing. Even though he uses the word possession here, it doesn't mean it in the terms, it doesn't mean it in terms of like, this is mine and not yours. It's more like, we govern this universe, this land, this planet, this cosmos, this multiverse, this whatever, right? Because of our abilities, we need to make sure that power and and all of the variables that exist are in a state of equilibrium always, and it is our job to keep it in equilibrium. Okay. It has been our command, if you will. And then lastly, power. So we have right here, let's not forget, right? We have we have wisdom, we have justice, and we have power. These are the three things that by our very nature are automatically awarded to us according to this. Okay? Now, power, which is the third attribute, God says, man shall be created through the instrumentality of the suns and planets, through regular and harmonious development of minerals, vegetables, and animals, each of which shall correspond to and embody some portion of his organism. Okay? So that is power. Power for us is understanding that. Okay? We were created in the same way that the suns and the planets were created. Not only that, but that the suns and the planet were created in such a way as to be instruments of our understanding of self and of God and of each other and of nature. So Right here, he's talking about astrology. He's talking about learning how to map the stars, learning how to use, the sun, the moon, and the planets to guide yourself, to understand yourself, to understand your neighbor, and to understand spirit. Okay. He's also talking about here that our power also stems from the fact that we must be in our harmonious development of mineral, vegetable, and animal because they exist within us. So we must understand what minerals we need to be ingesting and we need to be around, what vegetables we need to be ingesting and be around, what animals we need to be ingesting and be around, how they behave and what that looks like within the body. Meaning, overall, that Andrew Jackson Davis, in this particular, cosmology here, is not asking you to ignore your animal state, is not asking you to simply say, well, I'm at the top of the food chain now. I don't need to worry about the minerals, vegetables, and animal aspects of myself anymore. I'm human. I should be looking towards spiritual things and spiritual things only. And what Andrew Jackson Davis is saying here is bullshit. You are part of nature. You must understand your composition within nature because everyone's mineral, vegetable, and animal composition is going to be different, which is why diets, there's no such thing as a diet that's one size fits all. There's no such thing as an exercise regimen that's one size fits all. There's no such thing as that because we are comprised of mineral, vegetable, and animal in varying degrees within our body. And to understand that and to live according to that will help us to be in our power and to have a lot of vital energy. Does that make sense? Then he said, beauty, which is the fourth attribute of wisdom. He says, he shall embrace all the suns and planets, all the minerals and vegetables, with the strength and the symmetry of all the animals in his form and organs and functions. So not only must you be in alignment with your natural self, be in alignment with how the stars and planets move, but you also must be in alignment with the fact that all of it, no matter how grotesque it might express itself, is beautiful. That everything is exactly as it is. That all of it is God. And when you see that from that place of wisdom, it is beautiful. It is beautiful. Does that make sense? And the fifth element, sorry, there's two more. The fifth element or the fifth attribute of wisdom is aspiration. And he says here that man shall know himself immortal, lord and crown of nature, seeking to become an angel, a seraph, even a god. So, this attribute of humanity that makes man a man is not only his ability to contemplate God, not only his alignment and alignment with nature, not only his role and responsibility as the equilibrator of nature, not only as an observer of nature and all of its beauty, but to be a man is to also to aspire to be God. Because once man knows that God exists in all things, including himself, it is only natural for then man to seek his godhood. Right? So that's the fifth element, aspiration, seeking one's godhood. And finally, the sixth and most highest attribute of nature is harmony, right? And he says here that he shall be an exact embodiment of the great spirit who creates him, shall represent in a finite degree the attributes of the infinite, shall desire and enjoy ineffable beatitude, shall unfold and maintain harmony, and shall be a complete embodiment of nature. So this is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, ultimately, these 6 attributes that make man man ultimately talk about just 2 very simple acts. One is to acknowledge and live in and aspire to be your God self, and to acknowledge, live in, take care of, and aspire to be in harmony with nature. These 2 things will allow that God self and that physical self and that spirit self to align in perfect harmony and will elevate the person according to this cosmology, according to this, right? Very cool. I love the way that that is explained. Thereafter was the universe organized for the ultimate purpose of producing man therein by a focal concentration of all elements, essences, substances under the most perfect conditions and influences which exist in nature. As the growing plant reaches that stage when branches are unfolded, and another when buds burst forth, but a third, lastly, when fruit is matured, so the macrocosmic scheme, under workings of divine law, arrived at a period when minerals came into being, a second when vegetables appeared, a third when animals developed, and that lastly when all conditions united for the organization of man. It follows that the ultimate use of nature is to individualize and immortalize the human spiritual principle as a mighty, magnificent machine adapted to this end by the omnipotent, omniscient artisan slash great mind. Okay. The progressive development of the animal kingdom up to man may be traced from its very beginnings, when, as the result of marriage between the highest forms and essences in the vegetable kingdom, there arose the first form of animal life, the inferior order of radiata. At a later era, the Pisces or Saurian kingdom was unfolded, followed by that of the birds. The marsupials was next in the order, and then came the mammalians, with all its classes and genre, including quadrumana. Quadrumana. The primary change from the last into inferior types of human organism is so easy that the anatomical and physiological transformation is scarcely perceptible. So what he says here is that the moment that monkey became man, that period between monkey to man, right? Between a marsupial to a mammal, right? Between the mammal of the four-legged degree to the bipedal was so minute in transition that you can go back and try to observe all of it, and you can talk about tools and talk about language and rituals and all kinds of things that may or may not make a man a man. But at the end of the day, what he's saying here is it really doesn't matter, because the progression is what it is. It's so minute in scale because it's happening at an anatomic level. It's happening at a particle level. It's happening within the soul. It's not a biological the biological evolution of man is the consequence of the spiritual particle evolution of man, if that makes sense. And so therefore, you can observe all of the biological changes, all of the social changes, all of the whatever changes, but the changes that are happening internally will barely be perceptible, you know? Anyway, each atom, element, and essence, every mineral, animal, and vegetable substance aspired to be man. Thereafter strove the vast ascending spiral of forms in creation, for man was the grand end which they were designed, originally to accomplish. When every mode of organic life reached the fullness of its development, when nature was adorned with beauty, with fitting atmosphere and geographical conditions, then Earth was prepared for man. By a universal combination of tendencies and efforts on the parts of each, he was in fine unfolded, and though at first huge and coarse, resembling the quadrumana more than other types of animal creation, his tendency was towards perfection until he became what he is now. All right. So again, we're getting into that whole like man is the best and all things about man and all it's a very like weird way of thinking, but I understand it. You know what I mean? Like I get how it is organized. Um and why it would be organized like that. My only argument, my only disagreement is that today's modern sciences, today's philosophical discussions are the discussions of consciousness within the mineral kingdom, plant kingdom, and animal kingdom, and how consciousness unfolds differently among them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are less than. Now, granted, I get what they're saying here, right? The contemplation of God. Yeah, I doubt that my cat is contemplating God. I doubt that, right? But that doesn't mean that it can't, right? So the potentiality is always there, which is what they're talking about here. The potentiality from the mineral kingdom all the way up to man is always there, but the aspiration and the wanting to progress is not, because that consciousness to see that there is more than themselves, and that consciousness to say to themselves, well, I want to be that, is just not there. And we understand that. Of course we understand that. And so for them, progression is a much more biological thing. It's a much more like they just progress. They just do the thing, right? Whereas our progression, our growth, because of our sentience, because of our consciousness, because of our awareness, is a much more co-creative process between us and the consciousnesses of nature and God. And so that's where the distinction is, right? Such then is the sequence of creation, that things of the mineral kingdom lose themselves actually and constantly in vegetable organizations, and the latter in the animal kingdom, culminating in the development of man. But man never loses his identity in subordinate forms, for he is the grand concentrated product and union of all things. Thus, in planet, mineral, vegetable, but especially in the higher animal forms, we behold in their workings the laws of association, progression, and development, or of the universal predisposition of all matter and vitality toward a homocentric unity and individualization. Thank you. That's the word that I was looking for. Homocentric. Homocentric. So Homo sapien centric. Okay. That's what this is. And technically, that's what all spirituality is, very homocentric. And we, as modern day science and philosophy, are starting to show that although we are homocentric, we are homocentric from the perspective of doing work, meaning just because we are at the center of the hierarchy, just because we're at the top of the hierarchy, doesn't mean we are kings to lay claim to all of the land. It's not, that's not the perspective. The perspective is, because we are at the top of the hierarchy, it is our responsibility to care for everything that came before us, because everything that came before us was required for us to be here in the first place. And if those things no longer exist, neither do humans. So to kill our planet, to destroy mineral, vegetable, and animal life is to destroy ourselves essentially, and to destroy any possibility of us coming back into existence ever again. Right? And so that's something that needs to be understood for sure. All forms, inferior and subordinate to man, are but parts of him and his own use. Considered as a physical being, it is considered as a physical being is to individualize the spirit. To this end, the human brain possesses the concentrated power and beauty of all cerebral organizations in nature and is endowed with three great functions. Before I get into the functions, this thing right here, this thing right here, this pisses me off. To the end, the human brain possesses the concentrated power and beauty of all cerebral organizations in nature. I mean, octopus, dolphins, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are creatures that are ridiculously intelligent. These are creatures that essentially, if given the opportunity, would outsmart us in a second. Absolutely. So there's just things like that that kind of bother me. Like, although it is true in sentiment, it's true in sentiment, it's bothersome because we've never truly seen the true potential of nature because we are too busy trying to control it, trying to suppress it, trying to cage it, trying to, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've never really seen what an octopus could do, or what a whale could do, or what a this could do or that can do. We're getting there. We're trying to study these things, and that's awesome. But the more we study them, the more we find out we ain't shit. We ain't shit. We are just another animal in this. You know what I'm saying? We look at beavers, motherfuckers making buildings inside the rivers that on a microcosmic scale, on a smaller scale with less refined tools and materials, are still building structures that are stronger than our own buildings in New York City. By comparison, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, shit like that. It bothers me. Like, just because it's different doesn't mean it's better than, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, that's just me talking my shit. Anyway, so 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 the human brain, right? Here are the three great functions of the human brain in composed, right? Number 1, to receive the omnipresent moving essence of the great spirit. To receive the omnipresent moving essence of the divine great spirit. So to perceive that, meaning if God showed up in the world, or like right now, just showed up, like as something tangible for us to perceive, we would be able to perceive it, but everything else cannot. Nope, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that our brain, that our mind, that our ability, right, to be the top of the brain food chain, if you will, and to be able to perceive beauty in its this understanding. Now, mind you, this is all after all of those previous things that we talked about in the previous chapter, right? Like, there are humans that are still functioning from a very animalistic, very primal nature. So we're not talking about these motherfuckers. We're talking about that person that is at this state, who has gotten themselves in a perfect state of harmony with himself, with nature, and with God. Now we can start discussing what kind of a brain does that motherfucker have. And what that brain has is an ability to receive God. That's number 1. Number 2, the ability to concentrate and dispense that information and all of its parts. Okay? And 3, the ability to give it indestructible organization, connecting it with the elements and substances in the outer world and enabling this interior and divine life to manifest intelligence in reference to itself and external things. So essentially, my people, divine inspiration being able to communicate that divine inspiration, and then being able to recreate that divine inspiration into the material world. As we would say, the ability to create heaven on earth, the ability to organize, to create, to connect, to develop worlds that are in complete harmony with nature and with God. We have that ability according to this cosmology because of our role, because of our spirit, because of our intelligence. And yet here we are. And yet here we are. As regards the individualization of the spirit, the soul's sublime density, as the spiritual ultimate of material creation, the concentrated center of divine love, will, and wisdom, our knowledge of the Creator's goodness enables us to know that which our experience has taught us also to believe, which is that every human desire is provided with appropriate means of gratification. Meaning, bitch, anything you've ever desired or wanted or could dream up is available to you through natural means. Everything you could ever need, want, and dream is already here. We might have to modify something here and there. We might have to whatever, but it's there. And we can utilize those things to create even better things. Each has been given us for wise ends. But the strongest, deepest, most interior of all desires are for immortality, happiness, and eternal progression. They proclaim that the truth that we are immortal and are approaching a period of unity which will satisfy our highest concepts of eternal happiness and development. It is for us, therefore, to unfold the beauties of the Spirit, study its immense possessions, and so attain just conceptions of our mission and destiny. So he's basically saying here, look, the time is upon us. We're here. We are here. We've already had thousands of years of philosophers, thousands of years of mathematicians, thousands of years of scientists, thousands of years of discoverers and observers who are all pointing to the same thing. I think we know. I think enough is enough. I think we got the answer we've been looking for. We just now need to do the thing. We all know what to do, but we now need to do the thing. And that's what this proclamation is, according to this, right? The proclamation is that our destiny, our mission is to live our best lives, like for real, is to live our best lives in harmony with nature, allowing nature to live its best life and in harmony with God, because we're unifying and we're getting closer and we're progressing and we're growing, and like it's like a vibe. Like that is literally the mission. That is our destiny. Make music, laugh, have fun, play games, indulge our passions, create. You know what I'm saying? And so what he's saying here is like, look, we've done, like, how much more do we need to debate? How much more do we need to discover? How much more do we need to da da da? When the answer is very simple. It's very simple. Mind must familiarize itself with the principles of justice and order. It must unfold its internal capacities, its spiritual perceptions and intuitions. It must explore the relations which subsist between man, between the natural and the spiritual world, between the widespread universe and the super celestial principle which enlivens and sanctifies the whole. Each human soul must attain a full comprehension of the many and glorious affinities which interlink its destiny and experience with the experience and the destinies of universal humanity. You feel me? Ooh! Wild. I don't even need to reiterate that. That was beautifully said. I like that. That was cool. All right. It is good to know that there is an omnipotent, purifying, and fraternal principle permeating the natural, spiritual, and celestial departments of God's most high temple. A principle which unites atoms and planets into one stupendous system, which unfolds spirits and angels as immortal flowers, which is the divinely inherited treasure of the human soul. And this principle is called the Great Harmonia. So now, the Great Harmonia is the name of one of Andrew Jackson Davis's book, and where he goes where he deep dives into basically this. And so yeah, that was the end of that chapter. I'm going to go back and just read the footnotes really quick just so that we make sure everybody's on the same page. But that chapter was absolutely dope. I mean, it was a really profound chapter. I really enjoyed that very much. Okay. So the Great Harmonia, Volume 1, that's where these passages were taken from, and from the Principles of Nature. That's where these passages were taken from. So I just want to make that clear. Okay. So in the Great Harmonia, he's going to elaborate a little bit on the soul here. He says, the soul is composed of imperishable materials with an immortal form. This is like making me play a game to let it know that I'm still here, I guess. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. Sorry, let's try that again. The soul is composed of imperishable materials and an immortal form. The anatomical and physiological man is the ultimate flower of all material primates and spermatic essences. His silver lining, or soul, is the culmination of all refined substances and vital forces. When body and soul are perfectly wedded, they discharge the sacred mission of developing a permanently individualized and self centered existence. This is an interior and beautiful truth. Yeah, I agree with that. I think I agree with that. But I'm going to give my. Okay. Here's my 2 cents on that, though. So we're talking here about, like, once this body and soul are, united, the immediate thought is that we need to individualize and center ourselves. And yes, that is truth. That is 100% truth, because once you realize you're God, you're like, "Oh my God." You're like, "Holy shit, now I have to function from this place." And it's very like into self, 1000%. But the next step, right? The Great Harmonia is understanding that everyone is going through that same exact process. We must assist them in that development of that process while maintaining harmony with nature and unification with God. And here's the thing, that part of helping others to develop that's not a part that needs to be very active in the sense of like proselytizing and fucking, tearing down borders and exterminating people, but more like live by example. And if they have questions, answer them. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not trying to intrude. We are trying to elevate by modeling. You feel me? So that's where this kind of Great Harmonia starts to come in to play. But first, it does need to be established that you do need to be in an individualized, self-centered state in order to get to yourself at a point where you can then give back to community and then do the work of being at that level, right? Which is why you need to be careful with the spiritual teachers that you choose. I'm going to say this again. You need to be careful with the spiritual teachers that you choose. If they don't have their shit together, that means they have not mastered a harmony with nature. If they don't have their health together, that means that they do not have a mastery of all the elements prior to them, and why understanding those elements within the body and nourishing the body is so important. And if they don't have unification with God, meaning they are not living in a divine way in relation to their environment, of course. Let's be real. Let's talk realness in relation to their environment. Okay? Because you cannot ask, someone who is being brutalized to act in a divine way. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it. Again, God bless them. Eventually they become saints and shit. But like in reality though, right? Anyway, I digress. My point is that when you are looking for an elder, these are some of the things that you need to take into account. Do they have their shit together? Is their health well? And are they living in a divine way? Are they being charitable? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? Like these are important. You know what I'm saying? And it's not so much about judging people. It's not about judging people. It's not about diminishing someone's character. It's not about what do you call it? It's not about none of that petty shit. You are putting your spirit in someone's hands. How do you not take that seriously, number 1? Number 2, you know, it's about where a person is in their journey. Just because they don't check all those boxes doesn't mean that they're bad people, doesn't mean that they're not gifted people, doesn't mean that they, none of that. None of that needs to even come to the forefront. You know what you're looking for, and when you don't see it, no harm, no foul. Do what you do. I know what I need. That's it. That's it. Anyway, back to the footnotes. Your girl is on a high horse tonight. I'm telling you, I've been feeling it all week. I'm not even playing. Like I've just been so fed up with some of the things I've been seeing and feeling, and some of the things that I've been observing in the spiritual community, that I'm just like, and I'm a very quiet, private person usually when it comes to these kinds of discussions. But I'm just on some other stuff right now, and it's not because of radicalization or being like gung ho about certain things. It's just I've gotten to a point in my life where I am done doing things for people. Like I used to make, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second because I kind of want to get real with you guys for a second. I kind of want to get real with you guys for a second. But like I used to make like candles, oils, I used to do workings for people, divination, this, that, all as something to give back to the community. In addition to the stuff I was already doing at home. I did a lot of charity work, I do a lot of volunteer work, I do a lot of, nature work. It's kind of ridiculous, and people ask me all the time, "Girl, when do you sleep?" But my thing is this, all of that to say, when when people are just so cruel to each other, and we're seeing these conversations, and you actually have to convince someone that genocide is bad, or that this is not good, or that that's not good, not because you're trying to regulate, not because, oh, I'm on a high horse, oh, because she thinks she's better, or, oh, because she's trying to police or what. It's not about that. How hard is it to just not be an asshole? Why do I gotta tell you that you're being an asshole? Like, that's kind of like where I'm at. And so instead of saying that to people, because you can't just walk around just being I'm a Virgo, and they already got a bad view of how we move, right? But like, I'm like, you know what? Fine. I'm just gonna go back to the books. I love reading. You know what I'm saying? And the first reason why I made this book club was because I'm neurodivergent, and I remember how hard it was growing up to sit down and read these texts. Like, these texts are dry as fuck. These texts are using language that ain't nobody used in like 400 years. You have to sit there with a dictionary and a thesaurus. And then if you add on any other disabilities like dyslexia or this or that, fuck it. Fuck it, right? And so I said to myself, I'm going to make this because I feel for my neurodivergent, brothers and sisters out there. And sometimes people need audio, sometimes people need visual. And I always grew up being a really good teacher, being a really good storyteller, being able to relay messages in a very easy way for people. I grew up doing that easily, and people were drawn to me because of that. And then I would go home into my little clam and go to sleep for like 3 days because that was so exhausting. I was always on stage, right? I'm a singer, I'm in a band, I do a lot of stuff. But even when I'm not doing that, I would engage groups by telling them a story or playing a role that they enjoy or whatever, right? These were like my little things. Anyway, I digress. That's part of the neurodivergency, right? Anyway, I did this book club for us. But like I was saying before, like I'm at a point in my life where I'm just like I got to start using this book club less as like, oh, let's just read a spiritual text this time, and more about really talking about the human experience in relation to the text that we're reading. And so that's why I interject. It's not just interpretation. I want to help you understand what we're reading because, again, it's difficult language and everything. But I also want to put it in a perspective of like, what are we dealing with today? And what does that need to look like for us? You know what I'm saying? Um, Anyway, so that was my whole thing. Let's get back to these last because there was only like 2 or 3 footnotes left. So let's get back to that. All right, let me share screen. All right, give me a thumbs up if you could see the screen. And I'm sorry to those of you on TikTok watching. If you want to read with me, go to my YouTube channel, The Magical Solution, and you can see what I'm reading and we can read it together. Thumbs up, thumbs up. All right, perfect. Okay. So, next footnote. It may be noted that, according to Davis, the laws of nature are not creations or institutions, but emanations and inheritance. They tell us not what God thinks or wills, but how he lives and how he must act inevitably. Ooh! You hear that, right? It's a very, very big difference between a God that creates nature and a God that is nature. Very big difference on how we view God. Okay? And also how God views us, right? It's because when you, just like it says here, they tell us not what God thinks or wills, like a way that he would with creation, but how he must act inevitably, right? Because he is nature. And now, because he is nature and nature is materialized, it has laws. So even though God is God, he still must act in accordance to nature's laws when he takes the form of nature. You feel that? Meaning, if today you decide to claim your godhood, cool. But bitch, you are still a human and you are still in like abeyance of natural law. Don't be jumping off buildings and doing wild shit like that, right? That's what we're saying. So, could a single law of his constitution be violated or suspended? There would follow the disaster of utter chaos, as much in the divine being himself as in the world which comes from him. What the fuck did he just say? Let's try that again. Let's try that again. Could a single law of his constitution be violated or suspended? There would follow the disaster of utter chaos, as much in the divine being himself as in the world which he comes from or which comes from him. So that's literally exactly what I just said to you guys. So because he is of nature and he now being part of the material form must abide by nature's laws, if he were to defy that or violate that, it would explode the situation into utter chaos for both nature and himself, because he went against his own creation. He went against his own laws that he himself put in place for himself. And that makes a lot of sense. Now let's contemplate. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's contemplate that from a mystic standpoint. Let's contemplate that from a spiritualist standpoint. Let's contemplate that from a spiritist standpoint. Let's contemplate that from an espiritista standpoint. If I am God in human form. I honor my human form, meaning that I am in harmony with nature. I move in accordance with nature, and I am connected to God's self, right? Then, if I make a promise to myself, if I create a boundary for myself, if I hold myself accountable to something and I violate that, bitch, both my form and my spirit will be thrown into utter chaos, bitch. That's what it's saying. That's what it's saying. That's what it's saying. If you were to contemplate it from that standpoint, of course, from a mystic standpoint, right? This is more on a cosmic scale. This is a cosmic thing that we're talking about right now, right? Um, but this is what's important because again, if you're God and God is you, then what's happening to God is happening to you. What's happening to you is happening to God. So essentially, yeah, we're talking about cosmic law right here, but as above, so below, bitch. That law applies to us as well. We just need to see it in this way, in our way, in a material way. Okay. This is another way of saying that law is the mode under which existence came into manifestation and is not imposed from without, and that the root of all law is in God. And what is God? God is love. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm sorry. I needed to get that out. I have a little bit too much energy tonight. Okay. Next footnote. Compare morning lectures, where Davis says, I accept the doctrine that man is the ultimate image of a divine plan and that he is destined to be symmetrically developed in body and caused to ripen in spirit. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yes, yes. So it's strange. The footnote here is a little broken up. So try and bear with me as I explain this to you. So the first part of the footnote is a quote by Henry Sutton. Okay. And the quote says, "Man doth usurp all space, stares thee in rock, bush, river in the face. Never yet thine eyes behold a tree. 'Tis no sea thou seest in the sea. 'Tis but a disguised humanity." So Henry Sutton is a Kabbalistic poet and seer. Okay. Now, this method of expression, which recurs many times in the writings of Andrew Jackson Davis, is a figurative method of speaking. And while it is liable to be misunderstood by the reader, it is not possible to say that the sense in which it was used has been constantly explained anywhere. Within the measures of the symbolism, the divine being is, as one might say, a vast ocean, and man is an unlimited multiplicity of vessels so organized that they can receive a portion of this water of life and being, which becomes therefore individualized in them. So far, the emblem is clear. Whatever it values, I'm sorry, whatever its value, because that's a huge difference, and I don't want to make that mistake. Okay. But the divine being of Davis is infinite, which means that he is outside all measures and cannot therefore be divided or separated into parts. Interesting. Okay. So okay, yeah, that makes sense. So God is outside of all measures, cannot therefore be divided or separated into parts, but right, okay. All right. Moreover, as the infinite or eternal unity, he is ineffably individual and cannot therefore become when incorporated with humanity. Ah, okay. So although he is immeasurable and truly at his core can never truly be separated from himself, he's still, He's still limited, basically, is what they're saying here. He's still limited once he is in form. He's still individualized. That which Davis is trying to expound for himself and to others is a particular aspect of the divine immanent in the universe and transcendent beyond it, as to which an intelligible thesis would be that man, by self adjustment or unification with the immanence, becomes immortal therein. There are difficulties attached to this, and indeed, they are grave and many. But the proposition is at least thinkable. So ultimately, this unification with God that we're all seeking, or at least the mystic is seeking, the spiritualist, the spiritist, spiritista, we are seeking unification with God. And what that unification with God looks like in the material realm, in the physical realm, is immortality. That's essentially what they're saying here in this script. Please excuse me while I take a sip. Mm. Sorry, I had recently recovered from like a pretty bad situation, so I'm feeling better, but yeah, I am really thirsty as I recover. Eric, what's up, man? Cassandra, hello, hello. Who else? You know what? Let me take a moment and say hello to some of the people that are in the chat. Let's see who's here. Lavetta, what's up, Lavetta? Lavetta, you are my ride or die. Look at you participating. I love it. Anybody else here? You guys definitely leave a comment, say hello, tell me where you're from. Leave any questions, leave any opinions or thoughts because I love it. I love it. I love it all. And I respect everybody's perspectives. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's so important to hear everything. Hear everything. There's truth every fucking where. Just hear it. Just give it an ear. Just give it an ear. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be oh shit, Instagram got its own thing too. My bad. Hello, hello. I did not know that Instagram was on an entirely different page. My bad. Anyways, so let's get back to it, you guys. Let me go back to my screen. There it is. Okay. Okay. Moreover, as the infinite and eternal unity, he is inevitably individual and cannot therefore so become when incorporated with humanity. That which Davis is trying to expound for himself and to others is a particular aspect of the divine immanent in the universe and transcendent beyond it, as to which an intelligible thesis would be that man, by self adjustment or unification with the immanence, becomes immortal therein. So that's what I was explaining. Okay. There are difficulties attached to this, and indeed they are grave and many, but the proposition is at least thinkable. Yeah, the only other piece to this that I think he might get into is this idea that, like, okay, so you're immortal, now what? And I think that that's where that next level comes in, that next level of spiritual growth and spiritual, because right now we are still talking about mastering nature. We are still talking about just fucking living on this planet together, just existing on this planet together without murdering each other. We're still at that stage here. That's a lot of fucking work, and as you can see, the beauty and the direction in which this is going is still amazing, but it's like, what? We are leaps and bounds away from that right now, and it's so sad. It's like wild. Anyway, another footnote. So, as Davis speaks frequently of angels and sometimes even the seraphs, it is desirable to say that he recognizes no hierarchies of spiritual intelligence, which had not at some period and on some earth in the universe begun their progress as human beings. So, there you go. There's that acknowledgement, right? Moreover, his hypothesis of the spiritual universe did not admit either pre existence or reincarnation. So that's another thing I kind of want to point out. Let's not forget this transition from spiritualism to spiritism is this idea of pre existence and reincarnation. So we are talking about a single lifetime. We are talking about you know, the work that needs to be done here in the natural world to create heaven on earth in order for us to then take the next steps for spiritual development and spiritual, really like lightening ourselves up, and becoming a lesser tangible form. You know what I mean? Because remember, he described those things in on the previous planets when we went through Saturn and Pluto. When we went through all those planets, like he discussed these different forms, and some of them are much higher in spiritual essence than we are, and their physical tangible body was not the same. Like we are going to biologically change and ascend as we develop in this way, and so um we're still dealing with just this stuff. It's kind of amazing. So we are now on the next chapter, but I'm stopping here and I'm taking questions because I've never read this long. Book club is usually about 45 minutes, but this book is so dense. This book is going to take us a very long time to get through. We're going to chew through it together. It's a lot, but I hope you do stick with me. It is a lot of fun to get into. Anyway, it is 8:26 p.m. here Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to stop sharing, open up the forum to um, questions now. So let's see where we're at. Okay. Let me just I'm trying to fix something really quick. Does anybody have any questions? Mhm. Oh, Lavetta, I always forget. You usually comment throughout the thing, so let me go to that first cuz like Lavetta, so yeah, so when we were talking about the atoms and the particles and you know the evolutionary states and all that stuff, yeah. I mean, essentially, he was essentially talking about atomic theory. Yes, yes, he was. In the 1800s. You're welcome. But again, using the language of his time. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's wild. It's wild. Um, yeah. And so this is the question. This is not even a question. This is the statement of the night right here. This is a good theory, but would take mortal out of their ego. Yeah. Uh yeah, that's the statement right there. Like we are truly we are in sort of this really kind of strange state where you really see the divide of consciousness. We have a consciousness or a group that is very like just okay. Like they're just okay with everything. Everything is just okay. Their level of apathy and their level of that. And of course, like all the other thoughts regarding all the other thoughts about regarding life just being like it is what it is, kind of attitude. And then you have ones that really like want to see a future. Like you have the I don't care if I have a future, I'm gonna just do whatever. And that could manifest in a lot of different ways. You know what I mean? Like, people can live free and die young, and people can, take advantage of the world, and people can live their villain era, and people can, do a lot of fucked up shit and a lot of great shit, all in the name of that, right? And then you have the people that are like, no, but that's not all there is. This isn't all there is. This might be all there is for like us in this lifetime, but like it doesn't have to be that way, and we can look to a future, like, and that's a really different set of mindsets, that kind of drive people. And so having sort of like this theory would require you to sort of knock all that stuff down, and any additional, ego traps that you guys have, for sure. For sure. I love that statement. Yeah. Oh, here's another one. You just dropping bombs tonight, Lavetta. Damn. Mankind has imploded, and this has resulted in a war within and without. Bitch, say it. Yes. Yes, that's exactly it. I mean, like, and that's where the lines kind of get kind of weird, because when people talk about, like, for example, you know we create this life, and, like, it doesn't have to be this way, and blah 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 blah, they're really missing sort of that other piece of, like, yeah, but we are a people going through an inner turmoil. There's an inner turmoil happening around the fucking globe right now, and then that inner turmoil feeds out into actions and behaviors, and then those actions and behaviors have fucking consequences. Things like war, things like genocide, things like murder, things like, it has consequences. And so in this is not, it's when we say, like, oh, we create this, it's not about blaming the victim. It's not about blaming the victim. That victim who's out there being bombed or being hurt or being whatever, like, that victim is not responsible for this. That's not about that. It's about the collective being in an inner turmoil, and that inner turmoil manifests itself into these domino effect of actions that result in these problems, and these things have been going on systematically for so long, and these all it takes is a few people to recognize that. Because what happens is, it's like that figure eight, right? It perpetually feeds itself. The inner turmoil creates turmoil, which then creates trauma, to then create more inner turmoil, to then feed the turmoil that then creates more trauma towards and here we go, and here we go, and there we go. And until it takes a strong person to say, I see this. I see it now. I accept it. I understand how this works now. And I can move differently. I can breathe differently. I can think differently. I can feel differently. However that might manifest for you, in order to cope, to redirect, and to make moves that are now feeding the inner love in you, that are now, instead of feeding the trauma, instead of allowing the trauma to keep getting fed, now we start shifting the action and shifting the thing through that awareness, is to feeding that inner love, feeding that inner love, feeding that inner love. And so that now the cycle of feeding that inner love is now projecting love and creating action from love, which then creates loving life forms, and whatever that looks like, to then feed back into your love, et cetera. And now we create a different chain of reaction, and it starts really 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 small. It starts so small, but I think it's these small movements that help us. I think people really, like, when we read texts like this, it goes hardcore into, like, these big sort of systematic changes, right? Like, which need to happen. Don't get me wrong, don't get it twisted. These things need to happen. We need to have big systematic changes, legislative changes, for sure, 1000%. I'm not saying we don't need that, but I'm saying that in order for those things to be effective in place, we need to have the inner changes happen. We need to have these inner, when they say it's a spiritual war, it literally is a spiritual war. Like, we have to do the inner work right now to adjust the collective. We have to adjust the consciousness of the collective. And that's one person at a time. That's not these big giant, like, movements. That's not forcing something down someone's throat. That's not creating restrictive legislation. That's not, no, it starts with trusting your neighbor. It starts with giving. It starts with start with a person at 100% before you make any snap judgments. It's give people a chance. It's starting small. It's doing little things and allowing those love loopholes to kind of, like, just go back and forth between you and life. In the meanwhile, and like the text said, here's where the cool part comes in, right? We want to connect it back to the texts, right? And in the meantime, you are staying in accordance with nature, what you're eating, what you're doing with your body, how you're thinking, how you're trying to be in accordance with that, right? And you're trying to be in union and unification with God, right? Like, so these are all, like, it sounds like a lot, but it's literally just, like, don't be a dick and like drink water and get, like walk and, right? Like, do I sound crazy for saying that? Do I sound anyway, I'm just being silly. I'm being silly. So, yeah, let's see what we got here. Let's see what we got here. Lavetta, you are killing it tonight. I love it. I love it so much. Oh, it's so true, girl. Exactly. Ugh, exactly. All right, let me go to Instagram. Let's see what's going on Instagram. Probably nothing. I have like no friends on Instagram. I like barely use it. It's to me Instagram is an advertising platform. I really do. I just like put advertising videos and or like political stuff that I like that the magical solution stands for. You know what I'm saying? Like my business is me and my brand is me and my business is me and it's also my husband, it's also my dog. You know what I mean? Like where it's all of us. And so like when we stand for something, we're going to let you know. And so I use that. I usually use Instagram for that. So I'm only taking advantage of the fact that I can post from Instagram from a different app, which is like dope. I just didn't know I could do that anyway. But I don't see, at least I don't think I see any. Is this not? Hold on. That's all right. Anyway, TikTok. Let's see what we got. Oh, hello, hello. Okay. Well, I want to say thank you guys so much for hanging out with me tonight. This is the most I've ever talked. How long did I spend on here? An hour and a half. Oh my god. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was helpful. If you like this content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you are looking for spiritual services of any kind, reach out to me on my website, www.themagicalsolution.com, or, send me a message on one of these apps, or you send me a message via email, magicalsolution@gmail.com. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. I'm I'm easy to get a hold of like the first time. Let's be real. Let's be real, Leilani. I'm easy to get a hold of the first time, and then it's a game of cat and mouse because your girl is just always moving. So, but yeah, reach out. We'll talk. Thank you guys so much. This is how we grow, you guys. Thank you. Bye bye.